Wonderful, lots of friendly faces popping up all around. Why don't I get started, as I'm sure other people sort of filter in. My name's David Hope-Jones. I'm the Chief Executive of the Scotland-Malawi Partnership. Welcome to this afternoon's meeting, a roundtable meeting with Fiona Ritchie, who is the Development Director for the FCDO. What was until recently, sorry, that's my doorbell embarrassingly going, what was until recently the head of DFID Malawi. I guess 5 things for me we want to achieve in the next wee while. Firstly, most importantly, to stop and listen to Fiona about her priorities in post. Next, we want to brief Fiona about what the SMP and MaSP, our sister network, are, what we do, and I guess more importantly, what our members do as well. Thirdly, we want to explore through open discussion and potentially closer collaboration and cooperation between what we do as 2 networks and what the FCDO does. We want to dig down into some specific topics that I'll talk more about in a second. And crucially, we want to support networking as well between our members. So please do stick around at the end for some informal chats, but I'll explain more about that later on. Many of you will have been at our December meeting with Dave Beer, the new British High Commissioner, and in many ways today's conversations will build on those from December. In my eyes, the UK government's representation in Lilongwe and Malawi, there's a sort of a holy trinity of the sort of British High Commissioner, the head of DFID Malawi, and the head of British Council. I'm sure they wouldn't use those words, and I suspect probably the relationship between them has changed with the changes that we've seen between FCO and DFID. But over the next 90 minutes, we really want to achieve as much as we can, which means cramming as much as possible into the agenda. My apologies in advance for the many people that I'm going to have to cut off and keep short. I've got the loathsome job of being the time police, loathsome but important to ensure that we keep to time and we finish after an hour and a half. Jade or Craig, if you're able to put a link in the chat box to the agenda, just in case anyone didn't receive the email. Very briefly, how we're going to structure it is I'll turn in a moment to Fiona. She'll speak for about 10 minutes, and then I'll speak a bit about the SMP. Stella will talk a bit about MaSP. We'll have a dozen or so micro-briefings from our members, about a dozen or so members. We'll have some hopefully quick questions, a more structured discussion, some open Q&A to finish, and then we'll have the informal networking. On practicalities, I'm obliged to say we are recording this meeting. As with our commitment to transparency, we will place a recording of it on our website afterwards. So Fiona, don't give away any state secrets in this meeting, nor anyone else. We'll try having cameras on if you want to, but if our friends in Malawi or in rural Scotland are struggling with connectivity, we'll turn them off. Please do engage us on social media, tweeting using @ScotlandMalawi and @UK in Malawi. But without any further ado, really delighted to hand over to Fiona. Fiona, the podium is all yours. Over to you, Fiona.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you for that warm welcome. I'm going to attempt this with my video on, and I will rely on you to let me know if I vanish or you can't hear me, but let's just crack on. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today, and greetings from a lovely, warm and sunny Lilongwe. I thought I'd start with a bit of an introduction about me and who I am, and then talk to you about my priorities coming into this role in Malawi. So, as you probably guessed from the name and from my accent, I am in fact Scottish myself. I was born and raised in Edinburgh, and I went to university in Aberdeen and then in Strathclyde. I didn't really plan to have a career in international development. I had very strong views about becoming a professor of English literature, but life took me in a different direction. I joined then DFID from our East Kilbride headquarters called Abercrombie House 19 years ago. So in 2002, I joined to work primarily in information management, and I haven't really looked back since then. I moved to London pretty quickly after I started to do a sort of range of policy roles. I've spent most of my career either in London or overseas. I first worked on Iraq in 2005 and then moved to Afghanistan, where I was posted throughout 2008, 2009. And my role there was really around sort of external coordination and trying to get a grip on sort of donor and aid coordination. I've also spent 4 years at our UK mission to the United Nations in New York. That's probably one of my favourite roles. Well, New York is an incredible place, obviously, but I find it incredibly helpful to get to understand how the UN works at headquarters level. And my role was to work with the funds and programmes, so UNICEF, UN Women, UNFPA, and UNDP. And I also led on some gender and human rights negotiations for the UK there. From New York, I then went to South Sudan. Before that, I had done several missions to African countries, but I hadn't actually worked in Africa. So my first experience was moving to Juba in 2015. And that was right after the government had signed a peace agreement, and we were all feeling very positive about that. I don't know how much you know about South Sudanese politics and history, but it didn't go very well after that point. So I had a really fascinating 2.5-year posting with a range of challenges, all related to the conflict. But primarily I managed and led our multi-million-pound humanitarian programme, and I was deputy head of then DFID South Sudan. And after that, I moved back to the UK. My most recent role was as Principal Private Secretary to the Secretary of State for International Development. So I had a ringside seat for the merger, which, it was a bit of a surprise in terms of the timing, but I think, close working between FCO and then DFID had also, we've been working ever more closely. And although it was surprising at the time and I could see pros and cons, I really strongly see the benefit of us having, really pulled together our development and diplomacy expertise. And in previous roles, I have been seconded to the Foreign Office, so I do understand both organisations, and I think we are sort of stronger together. For me, the flip side of this was, as Principal Private Secretary, I of course had to find myself another job. And luckily for me, the role of Development Director in Malawi came free, and I jumped at it. And it's been fantastic. I've been here since the start of January. So I won't pretend to be anything other than sort of fresh and new, and I'm really learning. And forgive me if I don't have the most amount of knowledge of Malawi, and all of you out there will have much more than I do. It's been, among the many great things about Malawi, including, just the culture, the people, the fact that we have really fantastic partners to work with. For me, it's been particularly wonderful to meet so many people who've either been to Scotland or who feel a really strong personal connection with Scotland. And I haven't really experienced that anywhere else that I've worked. People are able to tell me about their relationships with England or with Britain, but that particular unique link with Scotland has been an absolute delight. And probably I'm biased, but I think there's a certain similarity in terms of sort of warmth and openness and the way people engage with each other. So for me, that has been absolutely perfect. So what I really am keen to get out of this meeting from you is to understand what you do, to understand what you bring, and really to sort of learn from you about what you think the challenges and opportunities are in Malawi. In terms of my priorities, arriving here, I'm sort of struck by the fact that we're in a really interesting, challenging time. We've got huge opportunities and huge threats, I think. So, the opportunity that I see is the fairly recent election of a new government that is genuinely pro-reform. And we can see that they're sort of taking actions that sort of demonstrate that they really care about this and demonstrate that they're planning to, walk the talk, if you like. But I think the challenge, and some of that has been around corruption, which is one of the things that I think that we are really keen to back the government's own initiatives on that. And that's great, but I also think that it was really obvious in January when I arrived that we were going through a huge spike on COVID, that not only the challenges of responding to COVID here, but also the economic impact that has had is really sort of reducing the government's space to implement its own priorities, to resource everything that it wants to do, and also to really get the space from the people who elected the government to demonstrate that they are going to do what they said they did. It just makes everything much more difficult. So I do think we don't want to, as an international community, we don't want to let that window close. And I know the government are very keen to make sure that doesn't happen either. So my priority is really to try and help work with government and development partners to try and make sure that they take the right policy actions that help, you know, reduce the budget deficit, reduce their arrears, and help really drive forward economic growth. And so a lot of that has got to be about raising the revenue base, but doing that in the right way, creating the kind of environment that improves the ease of doing business, improves the likelihood of investment, reduces barriers to trade, and frankly helps them balance the books a bit better. And I think, and I should have also mentioned there's diversifying agriculture. I mean, you know very well that Malawi is a sort of subsistence agriculture economy, and I think growth is not going to be possible until that kind of agriculture base is diversified. And then, of course, we have always been and will continue to be significantly invested in health and education. Human capital is massively critical for Malawi. It's got such an expanding population, and we can see that COVID has definitely had an impact on education. It's had an impact on women and girls. So, you know, developing a good human capital base is the foundation of everything else that we're trying to do. And then I guess the other thing that I would really point to, potentially very obvious, and I know you discussed this with Dave, is climate and environment. Again, you know, Malawi doesn't suffer from conflict, but it does have some really hard binding constraints, and they're all around things like energy, deforestation, use of land, adapting to climate change. So I know we're going to come on to that a bit later, so I won't say too much right now. For me, you know, obviously this is an important year to focus on that because of COP26, but I really want to emphasize that it's not just about COP26 itself, it's not just about the negotiations, it's about how we leverage that into actual genuine change for Malawi and how, you know, we can capitalize on this international negotiation and make sure that it works for the poorest here. So, David, I think I'll stop here, and then that will create space for people to ask any questions that they might have. And I'll go off camera and try and figure out how to chat. If people have got questions for me, pop them in, or just, you know, ask them basically. But it's really, really lovely to meet you all. Thanks very much.
Fantastic, Fiona. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful starter for 10. I'm going to speak for a little bit about the SMP. I'm going to pass to Stella, who will tell us about the MaSP. We'll hear case studies from our members, and then we'll get stuck into the Q&A. As some colleagues have already, please do feel free to pop questions for Fiona in the chat box. And Fiona, you're welcome if you want to give quick answers in the chat box, or we can use our Q&A time to come back to them. Let me see if I can get a screen share working here. Great. Okay, here we go. So yeah, I want to spend about 5 minutes so giving a quick overarching briefing on the SMP, but the life and soul of the SMP is, of course, our members, and we'll hear from them in a moment. Of course, you'll know that the relationship between Scotland and Malawi dates back to this guy 162 years ago, and you know, we continue to see each day the sort of warmth with which Livingstone is remembered in Malawi. Hastings Kamuzu Banda received his medical degree from Edinburgh, which he was very proud about. Chapman Connell's First Minister visited Malawi in 2004, fell in love with it, as many Scots before and since have done. He formalised the intergovernmental relationship in November 2005. That was again reinstated with the current First Minister and then President in 2018. I should emphasise the Scotland-Malawi partnership is co-funded by, but entirely independent to, the Scottish Government. We work very closely with the Scottish Government, the UK Government and the Malawian Government and all three parliaments, but it is in the civic space, the associational space, that is our bread and butter. Some numbers on scale, if I may, Fiona. A study by University of Edinburgh in 2018 found that when you add up what our members do, they're contributing more than £50 million each year in time, effort and money to their links with Malawi. More than 100,000 Scots are involved in each year a civic link with Malawi, almost double that in terms of Malawians. Almost 3 million Malawians benefit each year from a civic link with Scotland, but crucially so too do over 250,000 Scots. Crucial because that's what makes it a partnership from our perspective. Both sides contribute and both sides benefit. Separate data, this time from the University of Glasgow, but also 2018, interviewed 200 randomly selected people across Scotland. They found that 46% of those people they stopped could name a friend or family member with a connection to Malawi. So when you say Malawi to an average Scot, half the time their eyes light up and they'll tell you about their mum's church link or their kids' school link. And crucially, the attitudinal data from this survey found that there's overwhelming support in Scotland for those links with Malawi. So the crucial point here from my perspective is there's something about the scale of civic engagement and the commitment to dignified partnership as a modality of the bilateral relationship that bypasses the sort of Daily Mail toxic narrative of aid as a sort of political vanity project, of something run by government. It's not. The relationship with Malawi is something that's run by the people of Scotland, and the government is almost sort of running to catch up. Ken Ross and others have written very well on what are the qualitative distinctive features of the bilateral relationship. He's pulled out 4 key points. Firstly, the priority of the relational, that it's real people with real relationships. Secondly, the scale, as I've emphasized, of the mobilization of civic society. Thirdly, and most crucially for this conversation, it's the innovative synergy between what's happening at a governmental level and what's happening at civic society, our ability to join it all up. And finally, the fact that it is reciprocal. It's a real partnership. Both sides benefit. We are a membership network with 1,250 members by member numbers. It's the largest international development network that we know in the UK. 140 NGOs, a small number of very large household name NGOs, and a much larger number of much smaller NGOs. With 50 businesses, over 230 schools with a roughly equal divide between primary and secondary. Every university in the country has multiple links with Malawi and a good number of colleges. 80 community and faith groups, half the local authorities, 30 national and professional agencies, including most of the royal colleges, the zoo, the National Library, RSPB, the Botanic Gardens, really all aspects of civic and associational life in Scotland. We have 300 youth ambassadors and 300 community champions. And of course, all of that is just one side of the coin. And I'll turn in a moment to my friend and colleague, Stella, who runs the Malawian side, the Malawi-Scotland partnership. 2 final slides. Firstly, what we would normally do in a normal year, what's the SMP busy itself with? We've normally got member forums in health, schools, further and higher education, youth, agriculture, food security, renewable energy and trade. We're producing information and guidance and practical support. Jade and colleagues produce a fantastic weekly bulletin. Loads on youth and schools, currently led by Louisa, and I'm really proud that over my 12 years in post, the average age of people engaging the bilateral relationship in Scotland has got younger and not older. So there's something there that it reinvents itself and reinvigorates itself by the youth involvement at both sides, and there's various pictures of previous youth congresses there. Media and communications, there is in a normal year about 3 features about Malawi and the Scottish media each week. And we're busy doing lobbying and advocacy stuff. We run the cross-party group in Holyrood and the all-party parliamentary group in Westminster. So that's, I suppose, a usual year. What are we doing at the moment because of COVID? COVID coordination remains the main thing that we're up to at the moment, with something like 700 organisations and individuals having been involved in our COVID coordination work over the last 13 months. We're responding very positively to the 3 challenges that the President set Scotland in his speech at our AGM in October. They were firstly to further increase the number of Scots and Malawians working together from roughly 300,000 to 500,000, to have a return high-level conference with the President within the next 5 years in Scotland, and to use COP26, as we'll talk about in this meeting, to inspire the next generation of climate activists in both our countries. Governance will continue to be a huge priority for us, and I'm glad you mentioned it there. Fiona, will shortly be announcing a major initiative of something like a 10-part webinar series, entirely Malawi-led, Malawian academics talking about governance strengthening in Malawi, very much following the call from the President and his Vice President in this space. We're supportive of the developing Malawi UK Chamber of Commerce. We've just had our brilliant youth festival. Credit to Louisa and Jane, over 250,000 people reached in that 1 week of digital youth engagements. We're launching, I think next week, our brilliant people-to-people podcast, 10 episodes, a young Scot, a young Malawian, interviewing everyone from Jack McConnell and Delisa Chaponda through to individual teachers about what does the relationship mean, looking at themes of climate change, looking at race and equality. And that leads me on to the final point, race and equality and Black Lives Matter, and how do we step up positively to the opportunities and challenges in that space. That is my whistle-stop tour of the Scotland-Malawi partnership as an overview. And let me turn, if I may, to my counterpart in Malawi, Stella, the Chief Executive of the Malawi-Scotland partnership. Stella, if you're with us, over to you for a summary from your perspective of MaSP's work. Over to you, Stella.
Thank you, David, for the whistle stop. You know, when David speaks, I'm drained of my vocabulary. So thank you so much. Can I share my presentation?
Yeah, that should be fine. Let me know if it doesn't work and Craig will fix that, but it should work.
Okay, thank you so much. We at Malawi Scotland Partnership, we are happy that we have this meet and greet meeting to get to know each other and also explore areas that we can work more closely. Malawi Scotland Partnership, in short MaSP, we are a network organization with about 465 members, 110 of which are members, they have link with Malawi, they have links with Scotland, and 11 of which received grants from Scotland some 3 years ago, and they are implementing projects in areas of water and sanitation, education, health, and other areas. For example, education, we are talking about capacity building, which like the College of Medicine, University College of Medicine, they received a grant and they are doing some courses like dental. In terms of governance structure for Malawi Scotland Partnership, we have board of directors chaired by Dr. Anne Poe, who is a medical practitioner. Then we have a number of board members, like the country director for Oxfam Malawi. We have others are lawyers, some are environmental health experts, among others. At office level, we have, it's a youthful team. We have myself as Chief Executive Officer. Also, let me just introduce myself. I'm new here at Malawi Scotland Partnership. I joined this year in January, mid-January. Before that, I did my education at Bunda College of Agriculture, a diploma in agriculture. Then I did BSc in agriculture there at Bunda College. Thereafter, I joined European Union AIDS project that time, which was delivering HIV/AIDS activities as an intern. Then I rose to the position of program officer. Thereafter, I joined United Nations volunteer here in Malawi, working at the UNDP office. Then I joined FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization. Thereafter, I joined National AIDS Commission. Then I joined a private company known as Japan Tobacco International. So, of course, with me is the team. I have Patso, who is the finance manager. Then we have Linda, she's our project manager. As MaSP, we have offices in all the regions of Malawi, headquarters being here in Lilongwe. Then we have an office in the north, managed by Tamen. Then we have also an office in Blantyre, managed by Ruthie. So we are spread across the country. As I've already said, we are a network organization. Our major role is to coordinate, to support the coordination of Malawi links with Scotland. By that, our activities span across. Whoever has interest in working here in Malawi with interest in Scotland, we are available. We offer technical expertise or how they can coordinate themselves with a Scottish link. And also, basically, it's for us to ensure that this partnership is smooth and benefits both countries. So, apart from coordinating, we also offer advocates to ensure that we impact the life of Malawians. We are also in capacity building to make sure that the Malawi civic links, the Malawi NGOs, be it NGO or anybody in trade or anything, we ensure that we build their capacity, especially of our membership, to ensure that they are able to deliver high quality either projects or whatever they are doing. We are also into resource mobilization. So we assist members to mobilize resources to ensure that they are able to deliver projects or interventions that impact on, that have a positive impact on Malawi as a country. What are the challenges that we face, or as a country that we, Malawi Scotland Partnership, feel are major challenges that are impeding development in Malawi or preventing us to achieve the poverty alleviation or to achieve the sustainable development goals? First of all, capacity. We feel capacity in terms of delivering projects. Some NGOs, they have capacity, but others, they don't have capacity. So that's an area that we need to zero in to ensure that NGOs, private companies, they have the capacity to deliver the projects that are implementing. By capacity, I mean in terms of the project, I mean to be able to deliver within the given resources that they have, to deliver projects within the specified that they were given, among others. We also, at Malawi Scotland Partnership, we are aware, I know Fiona already mentioned, corruption. That is a big stumbling block to development. And we are of the view that if we are to go a step further, if Malawi is to change, we need to mainstream these issues, corruption issues. Children need to learn at the very early stage of what corruption is. So we need to mainstream corruption in the education system. Etiquette issues should also be included in that will be part of the social skills. In terms of areas that we feel are open for collaboration, we are, as a membership organization, we are looking forward to collaborate more in the capacity building. We are looking forward to collaborate in the area of business and trade. Of interest now is industrial hemp, industrial and medicinal hemp. This is a new crop here in Malawi. I should think maybe elsewhere or people have the expertise. We need research to that extent. So that is an area that we can also collaborate. In terms of business, maybe if there's an opportunity for us to organize business and trade conference or whatever we can call it, but a virtual one to promote Malawi, Scotland, even the Great Britain, that is also an area that we are looking forward. Our members, they also need resources. So we are open to engage in resource mobilization to assist our members so that they are able to deliver projects. Not only deliver projects, we are also able to form consortium to ensure that we implement projects and isolate best practices that can be scaled up later on, like to implement flagship projects, like in the area of education. Fiona did mention that COVID has negatively hit not only Malawi, of course, even other countries. If you look at the education sector here in Malawi in terms of infrastructure, you realize that our children learn in an environment that is somehow pathetic. Those are the areas that we are looking at to say, what can we do to ensure that we create the social distance as a requirement for COVID, at the same time providing a better learning, conducive learning environment for the youth. Let me stop that, but I'll ask my colleagues, maybe Linda and the others who are here, just to do a quick introduction. Thank you so much, David.
Thanks very much, Stella. Do any MaSP colleagues want to just very briefly just say hello? We do need to keep to the agenda, so just literally just a word or two saying hello.
Hi, David. Hi, it's Linda. I'm pleased to join everyone here. I'm the programs manager for MaSP, and it's quite interesting. Thank you.
Hello, this is Dominic. I'm the Northern Region Coordinator for Malawi Scotland Partnership. Excited.
Hi everyone, this is Ruth Maloa, the Regional Coordinator for the Southern Region for Malawi Scotland Partnership.
Hello everyone. Hi everyone. This is... Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, Kevin. Hi, everyone. My name is Mpatso Sabangwa. I'm the Programs Officer for Malawi Scotland Partnership. Thank you.
Greetings, everyone. This is Christian Chigarimba. I'm the Finance and Admin Assistant Intern, Malawi Scotland Partnership. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Kelvin Muhiwa, the ICT Intern working in Longwe for MaSP. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Henry Sinkata, coordinating Malawi Climate Leaders Project. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. This is Chinsisi
very much.
Kazua.
Go ahead, Chinsisi.
This is Chinsisi Kazua. I'm the Malawi Climate Leaders Project Officer for the Malawi Scotland Partnership.
Fantastic. I'm so sorry for cutting you off there, Chinsisi. Thank you very much, Stella, and all MaSP colleagues for those warm introductions. Having given, I suppose, the eagle-eye view of it all from SMP and MaSP, we really want to give a sense of the beautiful patchwork quilt that is the membership of SMP and MaSP. We're going to do this by having 12 really snappy, quick, 90-second case studies. And I want to turn first to Tracy Morse from Strathclyde University with an example of higher educational institutional linking. Tracy, over to you.
I feel the pressure to be very much on time, David. So thanks very much. Nice to meet you, Fiona, especially as a Strathclyde alum now that I've established that. I'm going to take you a very, very quick tour of Strathclyde's long history of collaboration in Malawi. So touch upon 4 key areas. We very much as a university take an interdisciplinary and cross-sectoral approach. So although we work hand in hand with our fellow academics, we very much also work with government and end users and the other actors like NGO and civil society as well. Firstly, a large focus of our work is on health, which is primarily focused on environmental and community health. We've led a number of successful community health and hygiene and sanitation programs, some of which have been very kindly funded by yourselves, so thank you for that. And which have gone on to inform several of the national strategies and programmes within the Ministry of Health and Water. So those have been effective. Secondly, in renewable energy, we've led the Malawi Renewable Energy Acceleration Programme, supported the Renewable Energy Strategy, and most recently have developed and currently evaluating the first of its kind smart solar PV microgrid system in the country. So that's in partnership with United Purpose and also with the government. In water, we've led the Climate Justice Programme with the Department of Water, and of course, very importantly in education, we've developed a range of undergraduate, postgraduate programmes with our academic partners, including primary education and environmental health. Obviously as well, building capacity with our colleagues in terms of research, and provided lots of scholarships to students in UNIMA and undergrads as well. Really important to us in all these programs is our strong partnerships we've developed. I was based in Malawi for 20 years. I'm now enjoying the rain in Glasgow and ensuring that we're very much building Malawian-driven, innovative, fit-for-purpose solutions. So really welcome the opportunity to chat to you further at some point about some or all of these programs. Hope that wasn't too long, David.
Spot on. Thanks ever so much, Tracy. No, Strathclyde has done some amazing work, has been an integral part of the development of the modern chapter of the bilateral relationship. Thanks, Tracy. Sticking with education, I want to turn to Lucy next. Link Education International has done fantastic work. Lucy, over to you.
Thanks very much, David, and welcome, Fiona. Link Education International has been improving access to quality education in Malawi since 2006. We work in close partnership with the Ministry of Education, helping them to achieve their priorities. In 2015, we supported the development of Malawi's first ever national education standards, which is a set of minimum requirements for teaching, learning, school leadership, community participation, as well as child protection. which allows which all schools in Malawi need to meet. We've also strengthened the capacity of government inspectors and advisors and trained over 500 school leaders in Dedza and Shinji and Lilongwe to develop evidence-based school improvement plans. During our time in Dedza, particularly primary school leaving exam pass rates improved by 22%. Within communities, we raise awareness of education rights and responsibilities, which is really key, particularly during COVID, and have helped over 200,000 parents advocate for quality education for all. Our current work is focused on girls who are out of school, and the Team Girl Malawi project, which I work on specifically, is funded through the FCDO as part of the Girls Education Challenge and provides complementary basic education to 6,000 girls who have dropped out of school due to pregnancy, early marriage or disability. Next month, Link will also be beginning a new project to Reaching Our Goals, which is funded through Comic Relief and the Scottish Government's Levelling the Field programme. This will focus on the Sport for Change methodology and work with a small subset of Team Girl Malawi learners. Really our strategy for the next 10 years is to build on all of these gains, support the Malawian education system to become more resilient to emergencies like climate change, as Fiona mentioned earlier, and to ensure that no child is left behind. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Lucy. It's been really inspiring to see Link's growth, significant growth of scale over the last five or 6 years. Really commend your excellent work. After education, probably the next biggest sort of category of our members is health. So a couple of quick case studies here. Can I turn to Paul Garside of the University of Glasgow? Paul, over to you.
Thanks very much, David. So I just wanted to give you a quick oversight of some of the things that we're involved in at the University of Glasgow and have been for quite a while now. We're involved in some major programs developing research capacity in Malawi in partnership with the University of Malawi College of Medicine, such as the Blantyre Lab, which will look at non-communicable disease, and a two-way learning process to learn about the diseases as they start to impact in Malawi, but also how we can learn about that for benefit in Scotland. Linked to that, we've also developed the first dental school program in Malawi, Maldent, which is also rolling out a national oral health strategy, which will be so important in Malawi. You'll hear more about the kind of impact and interactions we've had, I think, from the next speaker, and how all of this also has been involved in the response to COVID. And Mia might tell you something about that. And Mia is also a member of staff at the University of Glasgow. I think importantly, it's worth mentioning that we've also been involved in climate response as well. And very interestingly, we are currently installing a solar energy system at the College of Medicine to power the new lab. And we're very proud of the fact that that's being installed by a female engineering graduate from the University of Glasgow, who's actually in Botswana, Eunice Ntubedzi, who went back to Botswana, set up her own company, who provides these kinds of energy solutions for places in sub-Saharan Africa. More importantly, also, they train local people. They've recently trained local Malawians, 50% of whom are women, that will maintain and run that system into the future. So we think this is a great initiative which will roll out further. What I should also say, I mentioned that this has all been done in collaboration and with two-way learning. And really, this all could not have happened without somebody who's also on the call, and I think he's still here, and I hope so, which is Mapwatsa Mpando, who was the principal of the College of Medicine and still works at the College of Medicine. And I would like to give a big shout out today for the fact that Mapwatsa Mpando yesterday became a fellow of the Royal Society of Edinburgh. So fantastic job and well-deserved, Mapwatsa. And that's everything from me, David.
Thanks very much, Paul. And you beat me to it. I was going to congratulate Mapwatsa a little later on, but no, hearty congratulations from all of us. Very well deserved. As we said on social media, I don't think anyone has done more over the last year in Malawi to support Malawi-Scotland cooperation, particularly on COVID. So really, really well deserved there. Sticking with health, and in fact, sticking with the University of Glasgow, as Paul said, I'd like to turn to Mia Crampin. Mia, over to you.
Thank you very much, David. So I'm going to tell you about a particular partnership, the Malawi Epidemiology and Intervention Research Unit. So we're an independent research unit, which is a partnership between the Malawi Ministry of Health, the College of Medicine, London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and since 2018, the University of Glasgow. So the work we do builds on over 40 years now of population health research in Malawi, which was initially in rural Karonga district district and focused on infectious diseases, particularly HIV and TB, but with more recent establishment of an NCD study programme and an urban population research platform in Lilongwe. So our current programme focuses on long-term conditions, both NCDs and infectious, including hypertension, diabetes, and HIV, and very importantly, mental health conditions, which is in collaboration with researchers from the University of Edinburgh. So just to add that during the COVID epidemic, we've repurposed existing grant funding with support from Wellcome and our facilities and infrastructure to support the COVID response. And together with the Centre for Virus Research at Glasgow University, we're currently conducting large population COVID antibody surveillance studies in Karonga and Lilongwe, which will include sequencing of COVID variants at CVR in Glasgow. And we're also conducting detailed immunological studies to understand the innate protection, the persistence of immunological responses to both natural infection and vaccination in the Malawian population. So most of our funding is from the Wellcome Trust and the UKRI, including ODA contributions, which I think we may be discussing in more detail later. But if anyone's interested in further detail, you can find more information on our website, which is www.miru.info. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mia. I should say, please do use the chat box. It's a wonderful interface as we listen to these micro case studies. You can ask questions of any of the speakers. Fiona, please feel free to ask them questions or to suggest questions for later in the discussion with Fiona. We were next going to move to NGOs and hear from Mercy Masoo, the head of WaterAid Malawi in Malawi. I can't see Mercy on the call. Mercy, if you are on the call, or if a colleague from WaterAid would like to take your slot, please jump in. Otherwise, we're going to turn to
I'm here, David.
Centre for Youth and Development, who has partnered with the Turing Trust.
Hi, David.
Over to you.
Hi, David. Hello, I'm here.
I do apologise. Sorry, Mercy. Wonderful to have you with us. I do apologise. It's just the name didn't recognise. Over to you, Mercy.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm using my phone. My computer couldn't work, so you can't see me. Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to interact with Fiona. My name is Mercy Masoo. I'm the country director for WaterAid. I also have another role, which is a commissioner in the National Planning Commission. So I hold two public hats. I'm going to share with you the work that we are doing with support from Scottish Government. But let me start by saying that the work that we are doing with support from Scottish Government is actually building on the work that we did from 2016 to 2019 with support from FCDO, UKAid, match funding, which actually helped us to launch a program where we are looking at supporting improvement of water, sanitation, and hygiene in healthcare facilities. So with that funding, we're able to reach out to 16 healthcare facilities. So with the new funding that we have from Scottish Government, which is about £1 million, to which we are matching with £1.2 million from Scottish Water and other donors that support WaterAid's work. We will be reaching out to 4 more healthcare facilities with WASH, and we're also reaching out to 9 early childhood development centers with WASH, including about 40 communities with WASH interventions, including water supply. So at the moment, we've been able to support 36 communities with boreholes. We've been able to support 9 early childhood development centers with water supply. And 3 of them we've also equipped with sanitation facilities. The sanitation facilities that we are actually supporting in the early childhood development centers are mainly toilets, which are inclusive toilets and child-friendly toilets to support the kids and the and the caregivers. We're working hand in hand with Mary's Mills, co-targeting these early childhood development centers. Mary's Mills has a program on school feeding. So what we are actually trying to do is to ensure that there's a clean environment in which the child feeding is actually taking place. Other than that, we have community interventions focusing on the total package of WASH. We've also been able to repurpose some of the funds that we have through this project to help with COVID response. Let me say that actually COVID, the coming in of COVID has actually shown us that there's quite a lot of work that we need to do in these institutions where you have a number of people coming together, but then you find that they don't have adequate water, they don't have adequate sanitation facilities to encourage the kind of hygiene that we need in order to prevent these communicable diseases. So for us, it's a challenge, and we are really looking forward to seeing more investment going into prevention of these diseases by ensuring that we have sufficient WASH facilities in these institutions. Let me stop at that, but I would really be happy if we could engage further on some of these issues. Thank you.
Mercy, thank you very much. And I do apologize again for not seeing you on the participant list. I'm sticking with Malawi with a MaSP member, this time a much smaller NGO. Over to James Gondwe of the Centre for Youth and Development. James.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, David. I'm very happy to be here and talk about our work together with our partners, the Turing Trust. I work for an organization called Center for Youth and Development. I'm the founder and the director there, and my name is James Gondwe. A big shout out to our partner on the call. I can see there is Neil Gilchrist, who is on the call. He's the operations manager, but then he's also responsible for the programs in Malawi. Yeah, so we work with the Turing Trust, and our work, we're a small organization. The Turing Trust is also a small organization. Of course, we've been able to develop and grow into, now I think we would rate ourselves around the medium-sized organizations. The Turing Trust has a lot of IT expertise. They mobilize equipment in the UK, and then they send over the equipment to us. In 2020 alone, they were able to send over 3,000 computers to Malawi. And on our end, we are responsible for getting the computers into schools. We've got a team of technicians who does the installations. We've got a team of trainers who provide training to the teachers. Both our organizations have grown rapidly. We started with 5 computer labs in 2016, and which rose to 38 computer labs in 2018. And to date, we are talking of installing 122 computer labs, that is in primary school, secondary, and universities. And then we're also supporting other non-governmental organizations that are able to reach out to thousands of students. In terms of impact, our work has been able to reach out to over 81,000 students. And we have increased the number of secondary schools with computers from 3% in 2016 to 44% in 2020. And from last year, January, we started an FCDO project. We got funding from FCDO to do a 2-year project. The project is supporting girls in education, really focusing on ICT, providing them access to ICT. To date, we've been able to support over 18 schools that we have installed computers in, with each school getting a minimum of 20 computers and a maximum of 50. And the computers that we've been able to install with this funding are able to reach out to over 7,000 disadvantaged girls. The FCDO funding for smaller organizations specifically has contributed to all this impact. And of course, at the moment, there are growing concerns from us, a smaller organization, with the Small Charities Challenge Fund being ended due to a cut, to the aid cut. I think it's sort of like a challenge for us small organizations. And the biggest challenge is that we are afraid that, oh, this wonderful work that we've been able to do might actually disappear. We are really looking forward to further engagements with FCDO and I would like to appreciate the presence of the director for FCDO in Malawi, and I'm looking for further engagement to really look at what other programs are available to support smaller organizations, especially organizations like ours that have been able to do so much work with the small level funding. But now with the Small Challenges Fund being ended, then we are sort of like really concerned. So I look forward to more engagements and being able to talk more around that. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, James, for that. We were going to turn to Jenny Chinabiri, the Secretary for Africa and Caribbean at the Church of Scotland. I don't see Jenny on the participant list. Jenny, if you are in the call under a different name, do jump in now. If not, just to know that the Church of Scotland continues to have incredibly strong links, particularly with the CCAP, all three synods with churches and presbyteries, the length and breadth of Scotland having active and dignified two-way partnerships with churches and presbyteries in Malawi. But who we do have on the call is Mike Beresford from Zambesi Mission, a faith-based link. Mike, over to you.
Thank you, David. My name's Mike Beresford. I'm the Mission Director for Zambesi Mission, or ZM for short. Our aim is to see self-sustaining, gospel-preaching, disciple-making churches across Malawi and northern Mozambique. Our founder, Joseph Booth, back in 1892, promoted what was then the revolutionary idea of Africa for the African. This concept is at the heart of what we do today. We work alongside Malawian churches and Christian organizations as partners in a mutually interdependent way. Our longest standing partner is the Zambesi Evangelical Church, or ZEC, whose roots go back to the start of the mission. ZEC have 5 health centres in rural parts of Malawi. We've been supporting them with PPE since March 2020. We have 4 other partners in Malawi and northern Mozambique. Together, we have been implementing good safeguarding practices in Malawi, which is a challenge that many organisations like us are addressing. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our friends at the Scotland-Malawi Partnership for their wonderful work. And before closing, as someone with a background in development work, I have to say that I cry in despair at our government's decision to reduce overseas aid, and particularly funding for WASH projects. Lack of clean water and good sanitation results in the deaths of nearly 1 million people every year, mostly children. If the government cares about our world's population, as they say they do, I urge them to reassess their decision. Thank you.
Fantastic, a powerful plea. Thank you very much indeed, Mike. I want to take a couple of speakers looking at the sort of business side of things, starting with tourism, if I may. If I can turn to Dom Webb of Orbis Expeditions. Dom, over to you.
Many thanks, David. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Managing Director of Orbis Expeditions UK and the responsible safari company Malawi. We work predominantly in social impact-based tourism, primarily centered around 3 core markets, working with schools, social and sports-based group programs. Our overarching model is to utilize tourism-generated income to build social solutions across rural communities and to try and help answer the question of how you create sustainable economic development in emerging rural communities. We follow the UN Global Goals very closely and operate a number of global citizenship programs and generally follow a format of adventure, purpose and learning across all of our trips. Within our 3 primary sectors, we operate a number of different programs. In education, we work with global citizenship, youth development, international development, sustainable tourism, geography, STEM-based and humanitarian programs. Within our business programs, we work with graduate schemes, career development, management and leadership, women in business, fair trade, trade and investment, and donor-based travel. We're also looking to work with the Charter Management Institute to offer diploma accredited programs at some point in the future. In sports, we work with football, rugby, cricket, netball, trail running, cycling, boxing, hockey and coaching programs, which partner UK sports personalities with groups of amateur athletes for the purpose of promoting the social, health and national identity benefits of sport in Malawi. We're also looking at launching a series of sports academies in the country from about 2023 onwards. We're also currently working on various initiatives, including the development of a sports training academy in northern Malawi, a community-managed social enterprise facility in central Malawi, and the country's first cultural and heritage database in southern Malawi. Many thanks.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Dom. Looking at investment, can I turn to Bobby Anderson of the Africa Lakes Company? Bobby, over to you.
Thanks, David. Original Africa Lakes Company was founded in 1878 with the lofty aim of displacing slavery with legitimate trade. So we picked up the name. The original company was actually only dissolved in 2005 when some other people in Scotland were beginning to think about Malawi. So we took the name and we used it as the vehicle for a syndicate of private Scottish investors who were interested in Malawi and willing to invest growth capital in existing companies. What we've tried to do is engage the business brain as well as the wealth of Scotland's business community and investment management community. I've worked for NGOs and in microfinance for a long time, and we always saw wealthy people as kind of a source of revenue. So we've been trying this time to see them as an opportunity to engage their brain as well as their wallet. We've looked at aquaculture, dairy, tea, macadamia, mangoes, cannabis, various other bits and pieces, predominantly in the agriculture and the agri-processing sector. And we've made 2 or 3 investments already, and we look forward to the new African Lakes Company lasting about as long as the last one did. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thanks ever so much, Bobby. 2 final speakers, both from the Malawi diaspora in Scotland, who play a crucial role in the bilateral relationship. I wonder if I could turn to Tione. Tione, over to you.
Thanks, David. Just to give a background on the energy space that we currently work on. So our business really focuses on policy dialogue with the Malawian government, as well as key energy sector players to support energy access and efficiency, mostly to try to create climate change systems that are very adaptable, but also try to support resilience of the power systems in Malawi. Our key areas of focus, like I said, is energy access, energy efficiency, and climate change. And this is through knowledge products as well as supporting in research areas of industry trends. Thank you, David.
Thanks ever so much, Tione. We were going to hear from Henry Kudsua at the University of Edinburgh. I don't see Henry on the participant list unless he's under a pseudonym, Samsung or iPhone or such like. Henry, jump in now if you are on the call. Otherwise, I think what I'll do at this point is, there's lots of questions that we want to throw at Fiona as a network, but I wonder, I'm keen to give Fiona the opportunity to ask any questions of the speakers that we've just had. We've just had a dozen or so members give a really quick case study of what they do. That's well under 1% of the overall membership, just at the Scottish side, let alone the Malawian side. So there's a huge amount out there. Fiona, over to you. Any questions that you want to ask? Quick fire questions of any of those that have spoken before, up to now, before we sort of open it out more broadly.
Sure. Thanks very much, David. And thank you so much, everybody, for those really, really helpful sort of elevator pitches, if you like. It's been an object lesson in how to cram in a huge amount of information in a really short space of time. And I've scribbled lots of notes. I will need to digest, I think, before I have specific questions for individual areas particularly, but I guess I had a couple of questions, one of which I'm going to put out there, but I think we will come back to anyway, which is better and ongoing engagement between the British government and the Scotland-Malawi partnership. What might that look like? What has worked well in the past? What hasn't worked well? What is helpful going forward? And then again, also, what do you most need from us? I know you want me to answer questions on aid reductions, which I'm really happy to do, and I guess we do that in the next section. And then a couple of other questions. How do you coordinate together to make sure that you prioritize, deconflict, and how do you sort of make sure that that you maximize your collective impact, and how does that work in practice? I really absolutely see the value of working in a very different way to the way the British government works, which is to prioritise a small number of things that we try and do in a large scale and in depth. But that's not the only way to approach development. And I really see the value of smaller scale activities. I just want to sort of get a better sense of how they all come together. And then a slightly controversial question. Can you see any opportunities from COVID-19 in terms of messaging, lobbying, influencing, things that we are able to build back better, things that we can use COVID as a tangible demonstration of the way that we need to work globally to solve particularly health problems, but that could apply across broader sectors? I think these are quite big questions. So David, I don't know how you might want to handle them. Maybe people can pop things in the chat, or happy to stay afterwards and chat them through. Thanks.
Fantastic, Fiona, to a number of great areas there. Let me give two quick answers to two of the questions that you've raised there. Let me invite any of our members on the call who want to respond to those specific questions from Fiona to raise your hand, or to put in the chat box your answers is probably the best way. From my perspective, let me pick up two of those. The first is how do we coordinate? And it's a really good question. That the model that we follow, the Scotland-Malawi Partnership, we're not a funder, we're not a regulator. We don't design or develop what's there. We don't look to control or even sort of coordinate in a sort of, you shouldn't be doing this here, you should be doing it over there. It's let a thousand flowers bloom. For us, the critical thing is raising awareness of who's doing what, just as we are in this meeting, to try and ensure that people are connecting, that they're listening to each other. It's crucial as well that we listen to the Malawian side, and I'll turn in a moment to Stella and colleagues in MaSP to give their answers to these questions. And for us to make sure that we're championing the principles of good partnership. We're not one to give sort of dogmatic advice. This is how you should be digging a borehole. This is how you should be building a school. But rather our role is to say, these are the principles that we hold all of ourselves and all of our members accountable. These 11 principles of planning together, of reciprocal partnership, of listening and engaging to each other, of connecting with the government of Malawi's priorities. So those are some of the ways that we as networks approach the sort of coordination challenge. You asked about opportunities in the COVID landscape. I suppose the single biggest one for me is moving to digital modalities for all meetings radically increases our inclusivity. It increases our inclusivity here in Scotland with friends in Orkney and Shetland that have never been to an SMP meeting before and are now regular attenders. But more importantly, it increases our inclusivity at the Malawian side. And that's a good segue for me to turn to Stella and any colleagues at MaSP that want to give any quick fire answers to those questions about how do we coordinate lots of smaller organizations and what opportunities are there in COP. Stella or any other MaSP colleagues that want to jump in now.
Thank you, David. I'll handle the one on COVID. In terms of opportunities, of course, COVID, much as it has negatively impacted us, at the same time, there are a lot of opportunities that have come out of the whole thing. If you look at it, has exposed our technology capacity. Do we have capacity to handle things electronically? Yes, we as a group here we have, but when we just go outside our offices, outside our houses, we realize that even maybe some schools, they don't have the capacity to have to do things electronically. So those are opportunities that we need to look at. When we closed, when COVID cases were very high, I don't think half of the schools in Malawi were able to do their education electronically. So those are the areas that we need to sit back and say, what can we do in the education sector to ensure that we improve technology-wise, so that we give our children education, even if they are not physically meeting. That is number one. Number two, if you look at, I already did mention this in my presentation, the infrastructure, education infrastructure, especially primary schools, secondary schools, they're in very bad shape. The question is, yes, we need social distancing, but how do you do social distancing when you don't have infrastructure, when children are learning under a tree? We need to come up with innovative way of doing things. We've been building schools using expensive contractors. why don't we use the available resources? Like at community level, we have skilled labor. Devise a mechanism to monitor that this skilled labor at community level, the youth that we train. We have TVET, every year they train the youth and other vocational schools. Why don't we use that at community level to ensure that they quickly put up structures of high quality so that our children are able to learn in such environment? In terms of coordinating, yes, this partnership between Malawi and Scotland, we have Scotland-Malawi partnership that side. We also have ourselves this side. We are working very closely. We are sharing best practices. The most important thing is synergy. I may know certain things. David may know other things. We have Linda and others. I'm just giving us an example. So the network is huge. So this side, we do as much as we can. David, the other side with his team, Scotland-Malawi partnership, they also do as much as can to ensure that we create synergy and do things together. Yes, we are doing it and we are achieving the results. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Stella. I can see a hand up from Mercy. I'll turn to Mercy in a second. Before I do, anyone else on the call who wants to feed in their views on these two questions? How do we coordinate as a network? And what are the opportunities that are coming out of COVID? Please do put them in the chat box. Everything in the chat box will be recorded. Over to you, Mercy.
Thank you, David. I just wanted to add to the issue of opportunities that have been brought about by COVID. I don't know whether I call them opportunities or call them negative opportunities, but I think we are being challenged as a country to look at our health systems. I think, coming from a point where when COVID came last year, we were challenged to look at do we have sufficient prevention control mechanisms in our healthcare facilities? And basic things like water supply, basic things like soap, basic things like, things that health workers need on the ground to do proper infection prevention and control. They were not there. And this is something that our health workers have struggled with. Of course, here and there, people have been coming up to support, in terms of donations, but we need to have a sustainable way of ensuring that our health systems are robust to help with infection prevention and control. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mercy. I like the idea of opportunities and negative opportunities. No challenges, just negative opportunities. I like that. Just a last comment from me on this question of coordination. If people haven't seen it, one of our members, in fact, he's a MaSP board member. I don't think he's on the call. Muti published a really good sort of 4-minute video about NGO coordination earlier on today on LinkedIn, I think. Jade, if you're able to put in the chat box a link to that, and really encourage everyone after this call to watch that. I think it's a real call to arms, a challenge to the sector of what more we could and should be doing to coordinate between NGOs. And I suppose in some ways that would be my answer to the raison d'etre of the SMP and MaSP, to support that coordination between NGOs in answer to your question, Fiona. And we are very keen to work with the government of Malawi to make sure that our members are supported to know about Vision 2063, to know about each of the major ministries' planning and priorities and policies, and they're working within and towards those policies. Just moving forwards on the agenda, I'm keen to come to our first sort of structured item, which Fiona, you talked about, which is COP26. What an incredible opportunity. Scotland, COP26 happening in Scotland. Malawi being the head of the LDC group, the least developed country group. What a great opportunity to hold the bilateral relationship up to the world. I wonder, Fiona, if I could start by turning to you. Any thoughts that you had? How do we use the bilateral relationship in COP26 to champion climate justice in Malawi?
Thanks very much, David. And I know that this is something that you talked to Dave Beer about just before Christmas. So I think he sort of set the ground there. But in terms of an update on where we are with preparations, you might be aware that the 4 goals for COP26 have now been set. and they are mitigation, adaptation, finance, and collaboration. And one of our major objectives was to make sure that COP really focused on adaptation as well as mitigation, because that's really the issue that is so critical for at least developed countries. And so we're really pleased that that will be a major focus. And we've been very active with the government of Malawi, in particular the Minister of Forestry and Natural Resources, Nancy Tembo, to help make sure that Malawi is able to really step up and play this leadership role, which it really has. And it's great to see, because it must be a sort of authentic LDC voice that is driving some of these discussions. And so a couple of examples would be that there was a clean development ministerial meeting at the end of March, and Minister Tembo attended that, and she sort of was a rapporteur for one of the group discussions, which was about physical space and debt. I wasn't at the meeting myself, but I think she was pretty inspirational. So we're really pleased with the way that Malawi is stepping up there, and also participating in various initiatives. For example, risk-informed early action partnership. They're on the governing committee for that, and also active in taking a particular role on adaptation action coalition. So, you know, we're really keen to sort of make sure that Malawi feels that they can come to us for any advice, guidance, support, and also that we are amplifying what they're saying, backing their own priorities for COP26. And, you know, we're really at this sort of action point now. The negotiations are starting, and we really have to sort of nail our flag to the mast and pick some priority actions that we want to drive forward. So coming to that, I think there's one area where maybe this is something that would be useful collaboration and coordination, is around youth and engaging the National Youth Network on climate change. Minister Tembo was really keen to be involved in this, and actually there was an event last week involving UNDP and the minister and the network. So I think that there's a really big role for civic society to help push, to lobby, and to help advocate. There's plenty on social media. The British Council is doing a lot from our perspective in terms of advocacy and support and lobbying. So there's definitely a lot to do. I've identified youth as one area where I feel like maybe there's a comparative advantage, but actually I'm really keen to hear from you. I think probably our priorities for what we want to get out of COP for Malawi are the same. So I'm sure that there's plenty that we could engage on. So I'll stop there and see if anyone has any questions. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Fiona. If anyone would like to speak on COP26 or they have any questions for Fiona, please do put up your hand or put your question in the chat box. Especially keen to listen to colleagues in Malawi about what you want to get out of COP26. Very briefly, from our perspective, we've had this Malawi at COP26 campaign going since February of last year. One of the main things that we've heard from the Malawi delegation, Malawi government and civic society that we've consulted is some anxiety about how many people in Malawi are going to be able to take part in COP26. So we're really keen to make sure that there is support, practical and financial, for Malawi's active participation in COP26, and with eyes wide open to whether it is going to be in person or digital. 30,000 people descending on Glasgow from 193 countries in November is obviously a COVID challenge. I know the UK and Scottish government are planning on the basis it will go ahead, but I think thinking about that plan B digital and making sure that Malawi is going to be well represented and that we're amplifying Malawi's voice is really important. But I completely agree, Fiona. I think amplifying the youth voice is really important. I won't go through all the details now, but there's a number of plans afoot in that space, and we are in the process of publishing 26 videos of young Scots and young Malawians talking about their climate priorities. I think we're up to 8 or so far. Any hands up or any comments in the question box on COP26? I don't know whether Stella or colleagues in MaSP want to jump into COP26 before we move on.
Thank you, David. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Hendrik.
As Malawi Scotland Partnership, this side here in Malawi, we are doing a lot on that. You may recall that we are having this project, Malawi Climate Leaders Project, which have been involving the youth all over Malawi to take some center stage on issues of climate change, and have been doing tremendous work. And now much of our focus now is on COP26, of which we have already started doing something on the ground. David, you may also recall the time where producing the COP26 video clips with Louisa, and that work is going on. And very soon, I think we'll be coming up with more of those video clips to make sure that the youth voices are also being amplified at COP26. And we're also working hand in hand with the Malawi government, mainly the Environmental Affairs Department. At this time, they've come up with a brief on issues, priorities for Malawi at COP. So we'll also be working towards that. All in all, we are doing something, and we'll be able to be checking on each other on how best we can do that one. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much, Hendrix. Just with an eye to the clock, I'm going to move us on, but please do, any input that you want to make, do put it in the chat box. It's the best place for it. We'll capture it all. And I know Fiona's very kindly happy to look at those written questions as well. But I want to move on to the sort of second item, and a number of our speakers today have raised it, and that is the cuts to 0.7% of GNI, which is a real terms cut to what was DFID's operating budget that I'm sure we'll track through to DFID Malawi, as it will all areas, and also the merging of FCO and DFID. These are decisions that have been made, and I am keen, in fairness to Fiona, to recognise they weren't Fiona's decision, and probably I won't ask for her personal views, but I suspect if she took her hat off, she might have different professional views. I recognise that she said she was made redundant by the merging of the two departments. But Fiona, you did say, I promise I wouldn't hijack you with stuff, but you did very kindly say that you're happy to speak about the 0.7% cut and likely impact on DFID Malawi. So I hope no surprises there, Fiona. Over to you if you're happy to say a few words into this space, Fiona.
I'm absolutely happy to say a few words. And just to clarify, David, I did in fact have to change jobs, but it was not a redundancy. It was just a different job inside the same organisation. So I was always going to remain a civil servant, which is fantastic. That's one of the great things. But yes, it was a change, and a change that I walked towards, and I'm now here in Malawi. So I feel pretty happy with the way that has turned out for me personally. Yeah. So look, I will tell you straight. The Foreign Secretary made a written statement to Parliament last week, setting out his vision for UK ODA in financial year 21-22. I'm sure you understand all of the arguments. The UK government finances are in a pretty parlous state because of COVID. GNI has shrunk. And you know, the government has made a decision that it needs to protect its budget over the coming year, and to do that, it has made the really difficult decision to reduce aid spending from 0.7 to 0.5%. It is everyone's hope and commitment that this is a temporary reduction, and the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary have committed to raising the budget back up to 0.7 as soon as that is financially possible. We don't know yet when that will be, and we haven't yet got a sort of set of firm criteria for what that will look like. In terms of the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office's budget, we will be spending just over 8 billion, which is about 80% of the overall budget. And the Foreign Secretary has set out some themes. If you haven't looked at the written ministerial statement, you should have a look at it. It's quite strategic and broad brush, but it does highlight what are the sort of thematic priorities for the government going forward. With that money, we have made a number of significant multilateral and other sort of large financial commitments at the centre. And some of those are really about COVID. So we've contributed significantly to COVAX, and we will continue to commit to some of the big vertical funds on health and education. So a lot of that money will trickle down to Malawi, but there is reduced money available for country programmes. So the remaining bilateral pot is not as large as it has been in the past. The Foreign Secretary has also highlighted that 50% of that bilateral pot will be spent in Africa. So there is a kind of ongoing to tackling the very poorest, and you know the sort of UK-Africa strong partnership continues. So we are working through now what that means in Malawi. We are I highlighted the sectors that we will continue to work in over the coming year. They're health, education, private sector development, SRHR, climate, environment, humanitarian, private sector, and governance. So we're still operating in a broad range of sectors. We do have a really tight financial position for 21-22, and there is no way of hiding that. And we have to prioritise ruthlessly what we are going to invest in, and to really make sure that what we are investing in is what the Malawian government would benefit from the most, what they really want us to do, what strengthens our bilateral relationship, what will have the greatest results. I'm talking to our partners over the course of the next couple of weeks to talk through what that means for our projects and programmes over the coming year. It is going to be difficult, but it will be temporary. So we are hoping that in terms of partnerships with other donors, we might be able to work with others to come in and fill some of the gaps. I think I'll leave it there. I'm sure people have got questions. Happy to answer them to the best of my ability. Thanks.
Grand. Thank you very much, Fiona. And apologies for my clumsy and inaccurate wording earlier on, as far as being made redundant by those changes. I do apologise.
I thought I should just really clear. Thanks.
Absolutely, no, very clear. If anyone has any comments or wants to jump in on this point, 0.7% or the merger, please do now speak. I will say again, it's not at all a dig at Fiona, whose decision this was not. But I will gently note that when the merge of DFID and the FCO was announced, I communicated with the Prime Minister, and he replied through the Secretary of State of Scotland, giving written assurances to me that 0.7% would in no circumstances be cut, because it was a legal obligation and morally the right thing to do. And so responding to that, we as a network do respectfully disagree on that decision. But we recognise the heroic work that Fiona, Dave and others in DFID, Malawi, FCDO are doing to make maximum impact of the very significant funds from the UK government that is still flowing into Malawi. And it's important that we make that message clear, that there's still a lot of investment that's going into Malawi through FCDO achieving great things. I wonder if I can turn to the next thing that we wanted to talk about, which is just enhanced collaboration between FCDO generally and the sort of Scotland-Malawi civic relationship. I saw in the chat box Susan made a comment earlier in the conversation. I don't know if Susan, if you want to jump in on this, and while waiting for Susan, if anyone else wants to jump in, put your hand up on how do we collaborate more between FCDO and the SMP and MaSP. Susan, if you're there, please do.
Yeah, I'm here, David. I just found the meeting that we had online with David Beer, and also this one today with Fiona, is really, really helpful, because we're hearing directly from the FCO on the ground in Malawi, but it also covers the thinking of the British government. And I think it just it gives everybody in Malawi and Scotland the opportunity to cross-fertilise all the usual networking. I just find it really, really helpful. And if we could do that on a regular basis, if people were able to commit to that, then I think that would really strengthen all our understanding of what we're doing or trying to do.
Thanks ever so much, Susan. Anyone else, please do put your hand up and put a message in the chat box, and I'll come to you. But Fiona, I don't know if you want to add anything in there about collaboration, and what can we do to keep this really useful conversation going?
Yeah, thank you for that. Look, I think it's really valuable, especially for me, because I'm so new and I can learn so much from all of you. You've got deep knowledge of Malawi in a way that it will take me quite a long time to learn. So selfishly, that would be very helpful. I guess I do want to express a little bit of nervousness about there's so many of you, and we are a certain size, and we're not going to have capacity to respond individually to lots of different really fascinating, really worthwhile projects, programs, organizations. So I personally find this kind of setting really helpful, because it helps bring us all together. And I'm really happy to invest time in doing more of this more regularly, because then, there's more mutual understanding that we can generate that way. And, I do have a really strong team here in Malawi. I've got fantastic colleagues, and I don't see why we can't broaden this out and involve more of you. And in fact, our climate advisor has said that she had been intending to get in touch and see if there was a conversation to be had around COP26. So I told her that I would commit her time at this meeting to do that. So that's one offer out there. But I think regular engagement would be great. I just want to sort of register the fact that we need to do it in a way that is as efficient and effective as possible for all of us. Thanks. Oh, and David, I'm really conscious that I haven't answered all the questions in the chat. If we don't have time to do that in the body of the meeting, happy to do it at the end. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Fiona. I absolutely agree. I mean, I think these sort of conversations are very useful. They're also quite efficient because, we can have, 50, 60, 70, 80 people on the call, all benefiting from 90 minutes of your time. And I appreciate the pressures on your diary, Fiona. I'm keen to have some open Q&A. I want to turn to Mark O'Donnell, who put a question earlier in the thread. Mark, if you're around and want to jump in and vocalize your question, if not, I'll read it out. Nothing hurt. Mark's question was, which in-country ODA modalities will be preferred with a reduced spending target and consequent reduced budget? Fiona, if you're happy to come to that.
Yeah, thanks. We haven't really got that far yet in terms of exactly how we want to spend our budget going forward, but we do have a number of existing projects and programs, and we have a range of different modalities. As I'm sure you're aware, we don't do direct budget support in Malawi, and we do that in very few places now. Actually, it's a policy decision by government really to not do so much of that. And I think in Malawi, the Cashgate scandal has played a big role in that. We work a lot in sort of basket funds and joint funding arrangements with other donors, and we also operate a lot through the United Nations. We have contracts with NGOs. And we also have contracts with private sector. I don't see us backing out of any of those modalities, to be quite honest. And I noticed there was some throughout the conversation and in the chat, some question about working directly with smaller organisations and organisations on the ground. It has always been the case. Frankly, we don't have the capacity to manage a lot of small amounts of money, and that's why we quite often go through a larger international partner first. And then we really value our downstream partner relationships, and we've invested a lot of time recently in making sure that we understand those delivery chains and to talk to our beneficiaries more. But the hard reality is we don't have enough people to manage lots of small pots of money, and which is why we have to, and we still won't, even with budget cuts. So that's not something that I think we'll be able to do an awful lot of going forward. David, I don't want to do your job for you, but I realised there was a question about risk appetite that has popped up a couple of times. I spotted it coming up again.
Please go ahead.
So I can just answer that while I have the floor. I do not see a change in risk appetite, actually. I don't think that the merger was not about trying to change the way the government does projects and programmes. It was really about trying to maximise the benefits of linking strategy, policy, diplomacy, development all together. We manage risk quite carefully, as I'm sure you are well aware, and we split it into a range of different issues, from reputational to fiduciary. We will never have anything other than a very low appetite for fiduciary risk, but we do like to innovate, and our current set of ministers, I think, are no different. They don't mind taking risks. They don't mind trying things and those things not working. So I don't think we're going to become more risk averse. We will have a little bit less money to spend over the next year, so we will need to invest it really wisely. But I'm personally up for investing in things that might not work, because you can always learn from things that don't work. So thanks. What else?
Fantastic. If there are any other questions, I'll pose some, but any other questions that you particularly wanted to come back to with the limited time that we have, Fiona? If not, why don't, can I invite Karen Lynn Pars, if you're happy to very concisely and as a question with a question mark at the end. Karen, over to you.
Hi, David.
Go ahead, Mercy.
This is Mercy. Yeah. Apologies if I missed this one, but I just wanted to know by how much aid to Malawi has been affected. What should we expect in terms of the reduction? From what to what?
Hi, Mercy. I can't tell you that, I'm afraid, because it's not fair for me to say that in this forum when I haven't had the chance to talk to all the government partners and implementing partners yet. I did notice in the chat you asked a question about why some sectors are being cut more than others. I do have an answer for that, which is it's a little linked to what I said earlier about the fact that we have made a lot of major multilateral commitments. So it's not, we can't apply a reduction in the same sort of broad terms across every single sector and every single programme. So it is asymmetric. And, you know, I said earlier that there was relatively less money available for country programming than there is for sort of central multilateral programming in this particular year. And then also the government has had a really hard look and made some really tough decisions about which sectors that we have added value and comparative advantage. And some of that is going to be very painful, as you know. You know, we are where we are. We are continuing to lead the charge on some things, and on others, we will have to step back and let others step in. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Fiona. I can't see any sort of explicit and direct questions. If anyone has any final questions before I close the formal part of the meetings, please do put up your hand. Just while I'm waiting. In fact, Kirsten Leask, I said if there's time I was going to turn to Kirsten, so acutely aware with all the pressures on schools, we didn't have any schools presenting here. They are the lifeblood of the school, of the bilateral relationship. Kirsten Leask, if you're around and can say just literally a minute or so about connecting classrooms and about the school partnerships work that's there, you're most welcome to. Kirsten, are you on the line?
I am, yes. Thank you so much, David. Yes, I'm not going to turn my camera on. I've had issues with it crashing the meeting, so I'm not going to risk that if that's okay. But yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to say a little bit about connecting classrooms through global learning. Because as we know, and as we've heard throughout this discussion today, the understanding and taking action on the big issues that shape our world has never been more important. We've talked about health and well-being, we've talked about climate change, gender equality, equity, inclusion, something that all of these things connect us all wherever we are in the world, really. So connecting classrooms through global learning, or CCGL for short, is all about supporting educators and learners across the globe to build equitable partnerships that collaborate locally, nationally and internationally on the big issues that I've just referenced. The programme is aligned to the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and the programme is completely adaptable to the needs of educational settings from early years right through to college level. And thanks to funding from the FCDO and British Council, CCGL now operates in more than 30 countries overseas, including Malawi, as well as across all 4 UK nations. It offers funding, free professional learning and free resources to state-funded schools. And this activity is supported by local expertise. And across the programme, we now have about 1,500 schools in funded partnerships, with 73 of these being between the UK and Malawian schools. We have engaged about 35,000 teachers in our fairly comprehensive professional learning offer, which includes around 1,500 teachers in Malawi. And obviously in Scotland, the SMP is a key partner in terms of the delivery of the programme, alongside Learning for Sustainability Scotland, my own organisation, the University of Edinburgh and the International Development Education Association of Scotland. And we're delighted that we've now engaged with over 400 Scottish schools, 145 of which are now in funded partnerships with overseas countries, including 24 with Malawi. And this is wonderful because we're seeing the adaptation of the programme to really add value across learning, across curriculum for excellence, and adding value to key national strategies, including the national digital literacy and STEM strategies, developing young workforce, learning for sustainability, etc. And I mentioned earlier in the chat box that during the COVID pandemic, we adapted the programme from one that is based on reciprocal visits to an online model, delivering all of our professional learning and supporting those inter-school partnerships to engage digitally. And that's been very successful in terms of increasing that inclusivity and just really reiterating what you said, David, around that enhanced equity that we're seeing across the programme. The current iteration of the programme runs until the end of this year. We're obviously very much looking forward to working with our colleagues at FCDO and British Council to shape the next iteration. And just to say to Fiona, we'd be delighted to facilitate a visit to a CCGL partnership setting either here in Scotland or in Malawi, should you wish to do that. So please do let us know. But yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to share a wee bit more.
No worries at all, Kirsten. The school partnerships were noticeable from their absence. So thank you for helping ensure that was remedied before the end of our meeting. Listen, in summing up, friends, the streams of main things that we were talking about at the end there, COP26, I think there are real opportunities to work together with FCDO on that. I hear what you say, Fiona, that particularly on the youth side of things. I think Hendrix is absolutely right, that MaSP 2050 collaboration, some really exciting youth plans for COP26 as an opportunity there. It'd be great to get Minister Tembo involved. Her husband, Morgan Tembo, was one of the inaugural directors on MaSP. So I think by my count, she's one of the 3 current cabinet ministers in the government of Malawi at the moment who I've gay-gordoned with on a Burns night in the past in the Longway. So I'm sure she's well disposed to working together on this. So it'd be great to we'll do a similar roundtable meeting with Minister Tembo and Fiona. It'd be great to have you involved in that to really map out what does this look like as far as youth collaboration. On 0.7%, thanks so much, Fiona, for sharing so openly and honestly some of the challenges that are there. We very much respect and are grateful for that. No great surprises as organisations. We'll have to sort of agree to disagree, and it's important that we've given voice to the very strong feelings from across our membership on that topic. And I suppose the takeaway there is let's keep talking, let's keep sharing that information, and let's try and make every pound that the FCDO does have to spend on development work in Malawi have maximum impact by working together. And that takes us to the third thing that we were talking about, collaboration. I've certainly really enjoyed this. I hope you, our members, and you, Fiona, have benefited from it. Please, let's perhaps try and make this sort of an annual thing. I think we agreed the same with Dave. Dave Beer, the British High Commissioner, or maybe stagger them through the year, so sort of 6 months apart, and that way we have a guaranteed touch point with FCDO. Scotland, as part of the UK, is an integral part of UK and Malawi, so let's keep these channels open. And I really want to just say a huge thank you to Fiona. She has an incredibly busy diary. She's made the time to come and spend it with us this afternoon. Incredibly grateful to you, Fiona. Before I sort of close the formal proceedings, Fiona, anything that you want to say in closing the meeting?
Really just to say thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure. And some of our conversations have been very positive and forward-looking, some of them around some harder realities, but I hope that doesn't affect our partnership and our good working relationship going forward. Really happy to do more of these, and I think it's a good idea to sort of stagger them throughout the year. Keep it coming. I'm really happy to be engaged and to learn more about what you're all up to. Thanks so much.
Fantastic. Thanks so much once again, Fiona. Just while I explain what's going to happen next, Craig, do you want to pop the poll up if you're able to? Really important that we get as many people as possible to click these links. It just asks a little bit about whether you think we've achieved those objectives that we set at the beginning of the meeting, to listen to Fiona, to her priorities, to give a chance for members to talk about what they're doing, to highlight the strengths of the bilateral relationship and talk about the topics of the day. And what's going to happen now is that the formal meeting is over. I promised that we'd finish now. Sorry, we're a few minutes over. But the important thing is we're not rushing away anywhere. The great thing about digital here is no one wants the room back. No expectation at all that anyone has to stay at all. But if you want to stay, if there's something that you want to digest or talk about what we were talking about in the meeting, or just you want to have a wee blether with like-minded people, this is the bit of the meeting that if we were meeting face-to-face would be over a coffee and maybe a Danish pastry. And it often can be the most useful bit of a meeting. So if you're not rushing off, you're most welcome to stay. I know Fiona has a very pressured diary, so no expectation at all, Fiona, that you stay, but you are most welcome to. So that is now the formal bit of the meeting all done. I don't know, Craig, if you're able to work your magic and unpin the speakers so we can see everyone. And if anyone wants to turn your cameras on, and really it's if you just maybe initially while there's a number of people, if you pop your hand up, your virtual hand up, if you want to share anything or say anything. And from here, it's just a really open space. You don't have to say goodbye. You can just shoot off, and it's just an informal chatting space if you want to stick around, as long as it's useful. So if anyone wants to say hi, just put your hand up.
So do we still have
just
Fiona?
wanted to say hi.
Sorry, who was that apart from Mopatsa?
Oh, it was
Hi, I'm
Mercy.
still here. I have 10 minutes or so, and then I have to run and prepare for a reception. So yeah. Thanks.
Wonderful.
Well, I'm Scottish. I can't resist a wee blether.
Good stuff. Well, while we've got Fiona, any questions for Fiona on a far more informal basis? Just jump in if you've got a question for Fiona.
Yes, I just wanted to find out from Fiona, Mapata from College of Medicine. In the past, normally, in terms of education, you've been in primary and secondary, but COVID has shown us that the impact of tertiary higher education investment, it has a major input. And I know that the SPA program is coming to an end. So is there any shift in others, especially in Malawi, where you haven't invested directly in higher education? I don't know if you are able to answer that, but though I would want also to engage later on.
Congratulations once again. I'm so delighted. And I think you put something in the chat about Dave coming to see a project. I will follow up with him and tell him that now he absolutely has to. So I'll follow up on that. I'll be really honest, I don't see a world in which we will start investing in tertiary education in terms of bilateral support. It's a decision that we made quite a long time ago to really focus on primary education as the area that we have the most sort of comparative advantage as a donor. I think others are active in Malawi. I'm still getting to know everyone else in their programs, but if I'm not wrong, I think the European Union currently has a tertiary education, certainly a higher education programming, and I know that they're looking at their future. I think they're planning for the next European Development Fund replenishment. So I'm not sure that's the right terminology, but anyway, I'm pretty sure that they still have that as part of their overall plan. So that would be a major donor to influence.
Okay. And sorry, just a quick one. The health sector joint fund, which like a health institution, we were benefiting in the past, but I know that it has been problematic. I don't know where we are on that, because that was also one avenue through the Minister of Health that our institution had benefited.
Okay, so I'm not aware of what problems you might be referring to, but the Health Sector Joint Fund continues to be active and we will be continuing to support it. It might be COVID just has made coordination and decision-making much more focused on emergency response than on other things, but it is definitely, it's definitely still active. Really happy to follow up if there's anything specific.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mopatsa. Anything else while Fiona's here? But I know she's going to have to stand for a second. Any final questions for Fiona while she's here? Just jump in.
Mercy. Hi, Fiona. I just wanted to find out from you. Now Malawi has got a new development vision, the Malawi 2063. And I just wanted to find out how that has influenced in terms of how you are repositioning your country assistance strategy as FCDO.
Thanks, that's a really good question. So the Malawi 2063 was published, I think, just a few weeks after I started. And I know that the National Commission for Planning has been sort of coordinating donors and has set out its plan for implementing that strategy. If I'm really honest, I'm a little bit concerned that it's a beautiful document and the plan is great, but there isn't actually capacity to implement what is a really complicated plan. And I will certainly be encouraging government to really prioritise which bits it will do first and to try and, frankly, make our lives a bit harder as donors and hold us to account a bit more, be more assertive about where it wants us to operate. But in terms of what we will change, actually, I don't think we will, because a lot of what we're already planning to do is front and centre in this new strategy. We might want to do things differently. We might spend more of our sort of newly revamped development diplomacy capability to try and influence other partners to get behind government's priorities rather than doing a million small things that don't necessarily do that. But yeah, luckily we have always listened to the government of Malawi, and I think we've always put our programming where it has had the most impact for them. Thanks, good question.
And just to add from our perspective, I was emailing Thomas Mtali, I think director of the National Planning Commission, earlier on today. What we're looking to do is probably in the next few weeks or so have a roundtable meeting like this with Thomas, but also other Government of Malawi leads to do exactly what Fiona said, to you know, give the Government of Malawi a bit of teeth with it, to really encourage and support our members across Scotland to work within and towards those priority areas. I think it's hugely important. Again, I flagged that base flow video, great little animation of why that's important. So news to follow, further news to follow from us in the next week or so with a date for that meeting. Any other questions or comments, please feel free to jump in at this point.
David, Stella here. First of all, I want to talk about the Vision 2063. What I've seen is what we need to do is we need to isolate areas that we think they are priority. Of course, when I spoke to Dr. Muntali, he did indicate to me that they have the Vision 2063, but they're breaking it down into 3 years each. So we as MaSP, as well as Scotland Life Partnership, we need to see how we can simplify the areas that we need to prioritize. My second, I don't know, it's a comment, it's a question to Fiona. In terms of education, primary school education, what specific areas are you targeting? As well as, let me also, before you speak, let me also talk about the climate change project that we've been implementing with 2050 climate change, 2050 project of Scotland. MaSP and Scotland have been implementing this project the last 3 years. Out of that, we've isolated best practices that we think they're working on the ground. For example, we are aware that cutting down of trees emanate from the fact that people are poor. They cut trees in order to sell charcoal or sell the firewood. So a solution to that, in other countries are also doing that using biofuel. That is a solution that needs to be scaled up. Our youth, as you put it, that they are very critical in terms of championing climate change, because these are the future leaders. So we have a pool of young leaders. We've equipped them with the knowledge, but we want them to roll out to champion the climate change. So basically that's it. But I'm just interested to know what is the future in terms of education, as well as maybe I should also add trade and business. How are we promoting trade and business, and what is in there in terms of education? Thank you.
Thanks, Stella. There's a lot in there, a lot of questions. I'm looking forward to us meeting in due course so that I can welcome you to your role, you can welcome me to my role, and we can talk about some of this in more detail. I'm particularly interested in what you're saying about climate and environment. That sounds like something we should talk about more, because I agree with your analysis. Quickly on trade and investment, we announced at the end of last year a new large trade and investment program. We haven't tendered all of that yet, and we will go out to the market at some point this year. We're still planning to go ahead with that. We may have to reduce the amount that we intend to do in its first year because of financial constraints, but we still want to invest in that. And there's two different things really. One of them is value chains. So actually looking at a particular product and taking it from one end right to the other end and thinking through all the different barriers and obstacles along the way and how we work with government to unpick them. We haven't figured out what product yet, but I can tell you it will not be maize. Then the other component of that is with Trademark East Africa, and really trying to improve trade across borders, so reduce non-tariff barriers, to speed up transactions, to just make the whole process at the border quicker, so that actually Malawi just finds it easier to trade with its neighbours. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell what we're doing in that sector. And then on education, our top priority is girls' education. It's one of the UK Prime Minister's biggest passions, and he talks about it a lot. And we've ring-fenced quite a lot of money globally for girls' education. And in Malawi, that's about trying to make sure that girls get a quality education, trying to make sure that they stay in school, investing in curriculum, teacher training, and a real focus on maths, actually, which has been identified by the Ministry of Education as a priority area for them. So we will continue to do quite a lot in that field over the next year and into the future. Thanks. David, everyone, I hope it's okay if I vanish and get myself ready for my next engagement, but I really enjoyed all aspects of this meeting, including the informal bit at the end. So next time, let's do more of that. But it's been a real pleasure to meet all of you, and enjoy the rest of your days. Take care.
Thanks ever so much. Really appreciate your time. Have a good next meeting. Good stuff. Thanks very much. Well done, Stella, for getting such a good meaty question with so much great content there. Just as Fiona was leaving, I thought that was great. And friends, just if it's useful, just to share, if anyone wants to share anything about this, Scotland Malawi Links, very informal space. Do just jump up any reflections on what happened in the meeting, what you heard, anything that you want the SMP or MaSP to take forwards as a result of the discussions.
For me, I think this was very good because it's difficult sometimes to get people like that within country to hear their priority and other things. So having a chat like this, if you are able to bring, sometimes maybe focus on one particular area where people can focus, like they have the 3 priorities, maybe you can bring education. So bring in the organization of education to have such an interaction informal. It might be helpful going forward because sometimes to book an appointment with them, it's not as easy as chatting here. Sure.
I think it's a great suggestion, and certainly for today's meeting, it was quite, broad and open because she's new to post. But it's a great idea, Stella, if you're up for it, of MaSP and SMP working together for more thematic, more focused discussions. Mia, I see your hands up. Over to you,
Mia. Thank you, David. And this is nothing that's not already been discussed with Fiona. I had a meeting with her a couple of weeks ago on behalf of the major health research organizations in Malawi regarding the ODA cuts, because through the Grand Challenges Research Fund, which is supported by ODA, there's been a lot of investment in health research in Malawi through College of Medicine, through Miru, and through other partners. And one of the issues that I raised with Fiona, and that I think it would be useful for SMP to keep pressing on, is that one of the most damaging aspects of these ODA cuts is the fact that they're done in a way that doesn't enable you to do any planning. So for example, we've been told on a very large project that we can only have 33% of the budget for the coming year because the cut to the UKRI funders was quite substantial. We're 18 months into a 4.5-year project. Everybody is recruited on that project, and we're being told we have 33% of the budget for the annual year, which means potentially it means redundancies. Fortunately, our UK partners are trying to take the hit to ring fence the Malawi end of the budget so that we won't have to impact on the careers of early career researchers in Malawi and so on. But what we really need from the UK government is some kind of commitment that this cannot happen again in terms of terminating funding on projects that are already underway with basically 3 months notice. It means that if you have UK government funding for a project, you can never offer anyone a contract on that project for more than 3 months, because you never know what's going to happen if they think it's acceptable to suddenly terminate funding on projects. And I think that's a particular aspect. We understand that economic fortunes rise and fall, but when you have a contract with a funder that says you will have funding for 4 years and you employ people on that basis, and then you're told at very short notice that funding is being withdrawn just for a year, but that's one of the most damaging aspects of how this has all been done. Thank you.
No, I hear you loud and clear, Mia. Nothing you say that I don't absolutely agree with, and I think it's particularly sad. In the next 6 months, there are a number of opportunities for the UK to show considerable global leadership, and I think, goodness, we're shooting ourselves in the foot before we start by doing exactly as you described these cuts. What this means for Britain's impact and influence in countries like Malawi. I do think meetings like today's are useful, the British High Commissioner and the head of DFID Malawi, as was, are able to say internally within FCDO, they're constantly being asked by all of these Scottish civic and associational life, what is the budget of FCDO Malawi going to be? What is the budget? What are the cuts? In Westminster and Whitehall, for there to be a sense that this really is going down very badly in Scotland for constitutional reasons, which probably all we understand. I think Scotland does have influence here, and I think just asking the questions and making clear, as you have very well there, Mia, what this means on the work, especially work that they've already funded and already committed to. I think credit to Fiona for coming along and being open and honest about it, but I think asking the question, keeping that voice going. And I've got to say as well, I mean, Masoo, great work WaterAid's done in the media this week in this space as well, in raising awareness of what those cuts mean. Anything else? Anyone else want to come on this or come in on this or any other point at all?
Yeah, for me on this issue, David, it's the kind of influence this kind of behavior would also have on other donors, on other development partners, because if we globally, this is accepted that it's normal for this sort of thing to happen, then we'll see the next donor is going to behave the same way, the other donor is going to behave the same way. So I think the message that we are sending from developing countries that this is not right. This is just not right. I think we have had time to actually foresee some of these things. People could have been given enough warning to say that this is coming. Can we please plan together on how we are going to manage this together? But it looks like they're just directives coming, down to us, and then we have to manage the consequences, which is not right. We have a lot of things to manage on the ground, people's contracts, commitments that we've made to the different communities. So, when you go to the communities to say that, because of our cut in funding, we are not able to do X, Y, Z, the trust that, would have built with our communities is eroded along the way. When you actually go back, they will say, these people, they take us for granted. So I think it's just for us to highlight that this is just not right. And it has happened. It doesn't have to happen again. We know it can happen, but there has to be a process of managing, such things, a gradual process where all key stakeholders are engaged. I know of, other, people that have had their, funding cut by 50%, whereby now they don't know what to do with the 50% that has been allocated to them. For them, it's easier for them to give back the money and say, we can't go ahead with this particular project. So I think for us, from a human rights point of view, this is not right.
No, I hear you loud and clear, Mercy. And a point we've made to the UK government on this, and again, I emphasise it's not Fiona's decision. She's trying to manage as best she can the policy decisions that have been made. But the point that we're making is it's been presented in the UK as a necessary economic decision based on the financial realities of COVID. And the point that we've been making is that the ODA budget is almost unique in that it's pretty much the only one that automatically decreases as ODA increases. So we do see it as a political and a moral decision separate to a economic necessity. I don't know whether, Mark, you wanted to come in on that. You put some good content on the chat box. Mark, whether you want to say anything into that space. No worries if not, Mark. And anything else from anyone else before we?
Sorry, David. I was just trying to sort of work it through. The fear is that Judah has been deprioritised in the UK. Now, if that's not a statement of the obvious, the point I'm getting at is the value of the cut there, 6 billion, is really a drop in the ocean. So my concern is it's been politically downgraded. And I think one of the points that was made a moment ago is really pertinent. It's to try and kick that back up the political agenda. And that involves looking for leadership in the European Union, from America and from other older powers in the world. And that's where I think we need to go. I think scrambling around, you know, and duffing up the head of FCDO Malawi, it's not going to get us anywhere. We need to go for the real big names. You know, I was very encouraged with Joe Biden's developments in the last couple of days. So he's one that we need on side. We need in the UK, look to the Conservative backbenches to influence there. There's cross-party support for development as a political priority, and that's what we need to mobilise. So that was really the points I was making. Thanks.
No, very good points. And again, really keen to keep making this point. You know, it's not in your words, Mark, you know, duffing up the head of development of the SDO. Absolutely not. All credit to Fiona for becoming and being a part of that this conversation and sharing so openly and so helpfully and establishing these dialogues. And it's important that we don't personify our frustrations at policy decisions on the officials who are working hard on the ground. But I completely agree. It's that while maintaining our neutrality, it's very important that we engage this topic. Mia, I can see you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I agree that the FCDO office in Malawi or elsewhere probably do not have the influence to make change in that regard, but they are a conduit to feedback the impact and the damage that is being done at a local level. That's certainly why we spoke to Fiona. We didn't expect her to make any changes, but we just very carefully laid out the impact for the health research organisations and said, please can you feed this back up the food chain so that people are under no illusion about the impact of what's happening in one of the countries with the poorest health and poorest GDPs in the world on these very important projects. And I think that's the role of the local offices. I mean, I couldn't agree more about the need for international lobbying, and yeah, I hope that's happening. But I think this is something that needs to be fought on all fronts. And just to say that the other aspect, it's not just about looking to the future, it's about money already spent on these projects that is wasted if they don't come to fruition. So in terms of the cost of a project that has to be terminated, that is basically money lost.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's one thing reducing the ODA budget in a phased way where you're able to reduce it by not commissioning new work, but cutting it so radically and so quickly by exactly as you've given in your example, Mia, cutting the funds that are there is hugely damaging, not least because of the community expectations on the ground and the relationships and mutual trust that it all sits on. So no, I hear you loud and clear. Probably time just one final point before we draw a close to this just informal chat. And anyone else, particularly if you haven't said anything yet and you just want to say hi or share anything, you're most welcome. Just jump in now if you'd like to say anything before I bring this to a close. Feels like that awkward point in a wedding where I ask for, any objections, speak now or forever hold your peace. Nothing is heard, so our metaphorical couple can get married. But no, seriously, thanks ever so much, everyone, for all of your input. Really useful, and thanks for sticking around for a wee blether at the end. It's really lovely. It's so hard to get so much into our 90 minutes, but it's really nice just to have a moment to sort of debrief and at a more sort of human level have a wee chat as we would. In time, one day we're going to get back to in person. We want to keep the best of digital and some sort of hybrid modality. But until then, it's lovely to have this little time to sort of chat at the end. So thanks ever so much, everyone, and we'll bring this to a close. But really appreciate everyone's input. Great job. Thanks.